What is up, Michael?
What's up? How we doing?
Not too bad. So you're in the middle of a Knoxville ice storm right now?
Yeah, well, Nashville. We live just below Nashville, but yeah, it's nasty.
Wow. Yeah, my brother just moved to Nashville as an
Okay.
aspiring musician, 18
Oh
years.
yeah,
He's having a blast. He lives like right on the strip too. So,
so cool. What is he like? What type of music?
ooh, he is our family, not me specifically, but our family is big jam band people. So like Dave Matthews Band, Fish, kind of that neck of the woods. I'm more
Nice.
rock and roll, like have
Okay.
always been that way, and I'm kind of like the black sheep of the family when it comes to music. But he's huge, like almost cultish when it comes to Dave Matthews.
I mean, there's a lot of those.
Is there?
Puts on a great concert, man. I'm a Dave fan for sure.
Yeah, that was the last concert I went to before everything went down with the pandemic, and I got to admit, I'm like, all right, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really really
He's
good.
better live than he is in studio. Well, thanks so much for taking time out. I won't take too much of your time here. I was listening to an interview that you did over the summer, I think, kind of talking about, humanizing the game of baseball when you talk about like stepping away from things and like getting out of your own head in a sense. Because, as a baseball player, as a catcher especially, you're dealing with so many different things, wearing so many different hats. Like for you to kind of just jump right into it, what were some of like the early factors for you as a young child, like pursuing sports or whatever it was, whether it's as an athlete or just as a human being? How were you able to kind of mold that mentality of, like checking yourself at the door? Like there's the human aspect of things and then there's the athlete aspect of things. Were you always a self-motivated person, or was there something else, like a specific event that lit a fire under you? What was it?
I think God wove me that way in the womb,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest. And I don't know if you know a lot about like genetics and genetical like traumas and different things like that. But like just through life, the way my mom was raised and her life was really, really tough. She had, by I guess the worldly standards, she may have had the worst life you could possibly think of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it should be a book and an inspirational story to every human being on the planet, especially women. And my dad had a tough life too. And, those two kind of came together with completely different backgrounds, but very similar. And they dealt with things so differently. And I had a mixture of those personalities, but I had more of my mom. My mom was self motivated because she had to be. She was a lover. She put up a barrier that, almost happy go lucky all the time. She didn't face things. So, as life went on, I had to learn to deal with things on my own because I was never taught how to deal with them. So a lot of it was dealt with in the womb. I always say that I slid out head first and I was ready to catch immediately out of the womb. And, you know, I had ADD, had two learning disabilities. So I was strong willed, went to anger management as a kid, which cracks people up because I'm relatively a nice guy most of the time, or so they say. So there's a lot of things that went on in life that kind of led into, who I was and kind of how I was molded. But a lot of it was out of like just necessity. They didn't really adapt to, how I needed to learn. So I had to figure it out. I had to process things differently. I couldn't do like hook on phonics to learn how to spell. I had to read differently because sometimes it would jumble all together. So like I had to process things different. It was harder. I hated it, but I was so strong willed when people said I couldn't or I wouldn't or I was dumb, it put a fire under me.
Yeah.
And it kind of played out into my career, and it ultimately I think is what made me successful. And there's some barriers that held me back as well. Cause I think it was my greatest gift and my worst nightmare all rolled into one.
Oh,
It,
yeah.
when you're trying to learn yourself in real time, it's very, very hard, especially as a child. But I had a great childhood. Every shortcoming, I feel blessed for because it's a chance for me to learn and grow. It's made me who I am today.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at, or I guess you can like listen to other people's perspectives on how they grew up. Like if you were like built up in like a nice home, like not like necessarily rich family, not necessarily poor family, but like you were grateful for everything that you had. Like a lot of people either sit back and relax, or there's people who are just again, wired differently. They see things differently and are more motivated than others. Like it's all depending on how your brain is wired in that sense. At what age did you go to anger management? Was that like adolescence years, or was it more of just like early on, like just trying to figure out life, like you said, and just going through periods of life where you're just really frustrated?
I really don't know. I blocked out a lot of it. But the age I was 7, 8. And like when I say I don't remember it, my memory of it is from my mom telling me about it. And then I've
Wow.
actually seen the paperwork now. Um, I I learned all of it when I was 24, and I got the paperwork. Me and my wife are moving into a condo, and we just got married at 23, and I'm cleaning out all my stuff, and I grab all of the paperwork that my mom's always had, and it was the first time I learned a lot of it. So I was literally reading what the doctor had said, and that kind of opened my eyes. Like, man, I was tough, but I
Wow.
wasn't tough in the sense of like reckless and everything. I was just super strong-willed. Like if
Yeah.
I had my mind on something and you tried to like get in the way, it wasn't good.
Right.
So I kind of think of it as like a cartoon of the Tasmanian devil for about 3 years. And my mom said it was very short lived with a lot of those doctors we saw. Once I started like going all in with like sports, they just kept me busy. And I kind of put all my energy there and I'd crash. So I
Wow.
got it all out. And I have a nephew that I learned I had 2011, part of my mom's long story, but he has a lot of the same issues, and they put him in jujitsu and soccer, and it's made him excel. He's like calmed down, he's not getting in trouble, and all those things. So like, I always tell people like, stay busy.
Oh yeah.
If you have time, and that was my biggest fear with the pandemic, is like when you have time, you over process, you overthink, your perspective usually goes the wrong direction because you're not filling yourself full of good and you're not growing as a human, which we always need to be doing. So, it was very fearful when that happened, even more outside of the actual disease. It was more about, the people aspect. Like every human being needs that interaction and needs to be like thriving the best they possibly can where they're at. But last thing on this is it made me look at people and say, I'm going to meet you right where you are. And I've tried to do that my entire life. So like, for example, I'm a Christian, but there's not one human being that is an atheist that I don't want to sit down and talk with for a long time because I want to understand them. I want to understand their beliefs and whether it justifies mine more or it makes me question. That is a plus for me
Yeah.
because it's going to make me a better person. It's going to convict me in my actual values and my principles for life. It's going to create a strong, sturdy foundation. And I try to use that with everything I do, whether it's mentoring now, AT&T, whatever it is, because I think that's what it's all about is, you should be asking as many questions as possible and always trying to debunk your beliefs.
Oh yeah. Having that curiosity is key. Like you said,
Yeah.
like if you being the Christian that you are, and at the same time, like looking at an atheist and not like cutting them off, being like, okay, like I'm curious, like why do you feel this way? What's your perspective on things? Like you both have an opportunity to grow and learn things from both sides, like from an educational standpoint. And to your credit too, like what you were alluding to with your nephew, kind of like taking like channeling some of those certain like anger things and channeling them into jujitsu or soccer. People couldn't, like when this whole pandemic hit at first, like all gyms closed down. Like if that was your one way of channeling things, like it was very difficult to try and bottle all of that stuff up. But I find it again very fascinating that you kind of just erased that part from your memory in a sense. Why do you think that is? Like why do you think that like you didn't have like an inkling of remembrance when it came to your own experiences with that early on?
My family didn't deal with trauma. So
Yeah.
like, I don't think I was allowed to, and I didn't know any better. And as I've grown, and my wife is super cerebral. She's one of the smartest people I know, and she questioned a lot of things to make me better as we grew. We've been together 17 years now, and like, the learning disabilities wouldn't let me speak in front of people, and I'm on AT&T SportsNet. You can't write that story.
Right.
I'm on TV for a living. I do podcasts. I just did an interview this morning. I just got off the phone with a guy that I talked to for another podcast, and it ended up not being a podcast, just be about mentoring in life. And those are things that I couldn't have drawn up, and it always blows people's mind. Like, what? You didn't speak in front of people? I hated it. I wasn't a talker. I was quiet. I was probably like a little scary at times because I didn't say much and always had a straight face. And that's how my dad was. And he didn't show me a lot of emotion. So that's kind of like, you kind of take those characteristics from your family. But I had someone that loved me a lot and helped pull out the best parts of me. And it helped me overcome a lot of things. And my personality went at it 100 miles an hour because I'm ADD out the wazoo and I'm very high strung and I like being busy. So I ran with it and it was fun. And I wanted to do it more and more and more to try to get better at it.
How early on did you realize that? Because again, like as a baseball player, not only as a catcher, but as a hitter, like you mentioned, like going through the motions, going through the fundamentals of hitting, like you were saying, like whether it's like you have a hitch in your swing or like you're going through a bad slump and you're trying to figure things out and all of a sudden the mental mind games pop up, you're in your head. And like you mentioned, trying to step away from baseball entirely, like trying to get out of your head in that sense. So like when you do step back into the plate, your mind is refreshed and you're ready to go. How early on did you kind of figure that out playing wise? Like, were there some frustrations at the plate and you were kind of like, man, I don't know what to do. Things are really like starting to pick up in a long way. And things are starting to build up in my head and escalating to the point where it's like, this isn't even fun.
It took a long time to find the non-fun part.
Yeah.
Because I was so enthralled in it. I didn't really like truly fail until I was in college. I was a freshman. I hit 169 and like I'd never not hit. And like I had a better GPA than my batting average, which is, kind of funny to me, because I wasn't supposed to do that either.
Right.
So I made the dean's list and I hit 169. It should have been maybe the opposite. But anyways, that was the moment I looked at it and I was like, I'm running myself ragged trying to figure this out. And what did it for me is I went to summer ball and a guy, saw some potential, I guess, and he grabbed a hold of me and he just like took me to a hitting facility outside of the summer ball. He didn't have to do this. He didn't charge me. And we talked for the first hour. And then we hit for like 15 minutes. That night I went to the game and hit a homer. And then I caught the first two games. Then I ended up playing third all summer. My coach was pissed because he wanted me to be a catcher the next year at school. But like that gave me like that joy back in the game. I wasn't putting the pressure on myself. Ended up having a great summer. And it was just really good. It was really the first time other than moving to college that I was literally on my own. I was living with a host family. So I was outside my element. I think every time a new challenge came in, it brought back perspective. And that's how it started. And then as, life went on, my wife would always tell me, hey, enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. Especially when I got to pro ball, because it's always about top prospects, who's ahead of you, who's not. Like, even if you don't want to be involved in it, people just keep talking about it constantly. And you just can't get away from it. So if you don't have a way to combat that or free your mind from it, it can eat you alive.
How often are you able to kind of remind yourself of this? Like, especially like, because again, you were in the minor leagues for 9 years, and the minor leagues, obviously its own animal, its own entity, like very gruesome, from what I hear. I have no experience. You have much better experience than me, but obviously like it's a grind, right? Like you're constantly going from city to city, bus trip after bus trip with the guys, and sleeping situations, eating situations, all, big question marks. Like, how often were you able to remind yourself, or I guess in a way, like what did you do to constantly remind yourself, like in a routine sort of thing, to say like, okay, like at the end of the day, there's a greater good that's on the horizon for me?
It came in a different package all the time for me. I played better with anger or sadness, like things that wouldn't like build up your like for me, build up my like stressors, I guess, if that makes sense. Like if I was just in a good mood, felt great, I played terrible usually. Like, cause I I almost got overexcited like a puppy that's got a new toy.
Right.
Like, I didn't like playing, all jazzed up. So, when tragic things happened in my life, I took off. And I didn't notice that until after I was probably done playing. But like, some of the best stretches are when perspective really hit home. So that was one way it was wrapped up in a terrible box. And then other ways was that like looking back, Jacqueline, my wife, was really good about getting me away. Going to the Grand Canyon when I'm in the fall league for a day. And she drove, hey, take some time, sleep, relax. And like, even when I didn't want to do it, she was like, come on, let's go. Like, you need to do this. And, it got us, into a lot of different places. We had a lot of fun. We got to see a lot of different things. And sometimes we forget that even now after I'm done playing, to take the time to enjoy certain things, just relax, reflect on, things you've done, things you've accomplished, because a lot of times you're on to the next thing. You're on to the next thing. You're an all-star in one league and you're already thinking about 3 leagues ahead instead of just going, oh, like, embrace this moment, enjoy right now, and then we can move forward, because this moment's not going to be here later on. It's gone, right? So it's all about like finding that right present at the right moment. And the last thing I would say is like serving was my greatest gift to perspective in real time. Like, if I could have just been a little bit more like Jesus daily, I would have been set. Because when I was thinking about others constantly, and it's a Navy SEAL approach, like, where's my buddy? That's the first thing they say when danger hits. They look for their friend. And that's what they're taught, because love is the greatest successor, I guess. It's what brings you ultimate success. And I feel like serving is, what you show from love. So, some of my best years looking back, I'm like, man, I don't even think I thought about my swing. No wonder I hit so well, because I was so concerned about all these debuts I was catching and all these guys that I was writing player plans for. And that was a joy for me. And I wish I would have done that better, but you learn as you go, I guess.
Do you think it was more so your experiences, both on and off the field with everything that you've gone through in your life that molded your faith? Or do you think it was, or were you, taught from a young age, and was it more of like the teaching style of it?
No, the only reason I liked church as a kid was the Easter egg hunt. And I wore a fun hat, and, everything else I just remember was like, ugh, gotta go to church. My best friend would go, like, every now and then we would go. We wouldn't be consistent, but he'd be asleep, snoring, and I'd be watching, trying to like not run around like a squirrel. And it wasn't really till I actually it was like my first real girlfriend. She was older than me, and she took me to a youth group. And church was different. It was like we were talking about Dave Matthews, right? His first time contemporary Christian music. I was like, oh, this is kind of like, acoustic guitar, right. Like, they were going kind of off tempo, doing different things. I'm like, man, this is cool. So I didn't see it as like being a Christian, or I just saw it as being with some like good people, good music, and they, seemed to have a lot of fun. So like it kind of became a thing. Then I started playing basketball with those guys, and a seed was planted. And I didn't realize over the next 4 or 5 years that seeds just kept getting, watered. A little bit of nourishment here, a little bit of nourishment there, until finally it just kind of bloomed out of me. I was at a game in Sevier County in the middle of nowhere. It's right in the middle of Smoky Mountains, kind of cool place. And I just walked out. I just had this like burning feeling in my gut. I always say that's the Holy Ghost. Or Jack loves when I say that because it makes me sound like a Southern Baptist. But like I just felt the Holy Spirit just kind of grab a hold of me. And I didn't know then what it was. I was like, I'm just going to go over here, like kind of calm down. I feel like my heart's racing. Like I didn't know what was going on. And I realized it's an euphoria feeling that you get when, you have something like, I'm trying to think, like exceptional happen to you. Mm-hmm. So it happens actually through your brain. It's so cool. Like when you put all the science stuff together with like the way God created us. But I was having that exact thing, heart racing, butterflies in my stomach. And I'm like, the JV team's playing. Like, what is going on? Like there's nothing exciting going on around here. There's no one here. So I walked off and I asked God I remembered that little seed, and I remembered when they told me the prayer, and that's what I did. And I walked away. My first bat, I hit a homer, and I was like, man, thanks. Like, is this how it's going to be all the time? Thanks, man. I think I struck out the next at bat, so I got humbled real quick. But
Right.
that's kind of how it all, I mean, then, you know, hindsight, there's a lot in between, but like it was just being around like good people, and it could have easily gone the opposite way. So I had two sets of friends. I
Mm-hmm.
had friends that were into no good, but like you said, staying busy, putting my energy in a better place was something that really helped me, because baseball was my everything. And when I mean it was everything. I wanted to wake up baseball, sleep baseball, it didn't matter, all the time. And if I didn't have that, I could have easily made that baseball a drug or something it shouldn't have been, because I saw it all at an early age and I saw both sides, but I had no desire because of that strong will and that energy towards something I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are in the same boat. Like when you say like you could have either gone, group A over here, not necessarily toxic human beings, but like you're not necessarily going to grow at the same time, or it could have been really toxic human beings. I don't know. It's like that for a lot of people. And then you have a community that like, oh man, everybody gets along, everybody learns from each other, everybody's growing. Like you said, like plant that seed and it just continues to grow. You mentioned some of those, aspects of life to kind of like get away from baseball. Like you said, you ate, breathed, slept baseball all the time. What are now some of the things that you enjoy outside of the game, or at least, during your playing days that you kind of utilize to get away from the playing days of baseball?
Well, this is one thing I like to do. I love talking baseball, but
Yeah,
also like, I don't think it's intertwined with life enough. Like what you're doing is, you know, the way you feel on an everyday basis can affect you in a positive way and a negative way on the field. But
yeah,
it's literally that way in everything in life. So like when you meet someone, you don't know where they're at. Like you don't have any clue what happened before we got on this computer, right? I
right.
could have literally been outside fighting a dragon and came in and they're like, hey man, what's up? And if I could play that well with my face and not show my emotions, like that's wild. But then at some point that's going to catch up to me. And if someone isn't willing to just see me where I'm at, they're like, oh, come on, suck it up, man, blah, blah, blah. Then that's the reality I'm going to create in my mind. And then it's like, you can't hold on to that forever. You're eventually just going to go boom. And you're going to feel like a failure because that's what you were told forever and ever and ever. So I just think like you have to slow down and enjoy life in different ways. And I'm a guy that, I go all in too often, but as I've gotten older, I've realized that like my real joy is helping others. Like I love serving. I love working with kids. I probably enjoy the grind of, you know, a business, the weight room, even my playing days. Like I probably enjoyed the off season more than I did the actual season, which people think I'm nuts, but like I loved getting like down in the muck and trying to come out cleaner. And I still love that, but I like doing it with other people and trying to help them maximize their potential. That brings me incredible joy. It's one of the founding principles in the Bible. I mean, Jesus was love and he went and served everyone. So I try to, play that in my mind, but it kind of comes naturally. It's something that was hardwired into me. I think it's fun. So like it's taken me to hiking, mountain biking, reading, Bible studies, leadership conferences and all these different things. And it's created a lot of different joys for me. But I realized that most of my joys come from doing it with someone I care about.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that's hard to teach. Like, you have to have that inner instinct to have that mentality. And like you said, like, it's an excellent trait to have as a coach, especially for you, like teaching people, whether it's adults, young kids, because I'm sure you had coaches just like how I had coaches in Little League, where it was just kind of like you said, suck it up, be a man. Like, they were like,
Come
condition.
on, little Johnny, let's go.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
some of it's good, right? It creates a fire in you, like if you weren't necessarily motivated that day or whatever. But at the same time, like you said, like you don't know everybody's current situation. You don't know what's going to necessarily motivate them at the
right.
end of the day, right? So how have you brought that kind of like into coaching when you're, because again, when it comes to a bunch of different players, you have a ton of different personalities you're dealing with.
Mhm.
How are you able to kind of navigate that from a coaching style, getting in the head of each individual player and kind of connecting with them in that sense?
I try to love them first.
Yeah.
I try to let them know that like I don't expect anything out of them except to, you know, give me, good attitude, good effort, and I'll give you probably more than you'll give me. And that's sometimes really a default button for me. Like I pour in and pour in and pour in because I want to give every kid what I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and some kids can handle it and some kids are like, oh no, sensory overload, calm down, calm down. And I've kind of learned to balance that, and I'm still working on it. But it's just saying, hey, how are you today? Like, what's going on? Like, what are you looking to do? What are the goals you have set for yourself in the short term and the long term? And then kind of have a good idea of the background I'm getting into. Like what school, like I do some practices with a private school in Nashville, and I work with some kids around here, and I've done some camps here recently now that things are starting to open up. And I go off what I'm seeing a lot of times. Like I'll go in with a plan, and then I see that emotion. I see them looking at their coach for affirmation constantly. I'm like, what's the deal there? And now I've gotten to the point where like I trust my instincts, and I tell them what they need to hear, maybe not what they want to hear sometimes. And it's hurt them at points. I've literally been like sitting with kids that are at college, and they're crying to me because I told them the truth. But it ended up being better because I'm not necessarily I I think it's awesome if they make it to the major leagues. And I've worked with kids and I've mentored kids that have literally gone all the way up the ladder into the big leagues. And I got to be a part of that process because I got to watch them. But like that doesn't mean as much to me as like what type of man they are or what type of woman they are if it's a softball girl. That's what matters. Like what kind of impact and ripple are they going to create with their life from the character they created, from the values they learned and the principles that they instill in their everyday life, and that they can hopefully pass on to someone else, because that's what really matters.
Oh yeah. I mean, in a way, and everybody says this, like when you're coaching, whether you're coaching or you're a business owner, the CEO of anything, like you're working for those that you're trying to help. Like you're working for your players, your employees. Like they're not working for you. Like as a leader, you need to be the one that leads by example, which I know for me personally, like I don't think I got that from, having like your fathers as your coaches in rec ball when you were 5 years old. Like when you get older and you go to the club level, you have like actual, like if you're fortunate enough to actually be um, uh, a player for like a former professional athlete who's now a club team coach, which I was fortunate enough, like you actually learn stuff that isn't from, again, like your dad just breathing down your neck and telling you that you suck and trying to like build a man out of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like you were saying, like that is a key factor in not only creating that relationship in the time being with your players, but like you said, like the ripple effect, like will that react in them learning from these values and paying it forward, or will they be disgruntled and stubborn or whatever? Because like again, you're dealing with all these different personalities. Some kids are going to get it, some kids aren't. Have you had those experiences?
Yeah, like I definitely don't know it all, and like I've owned my mistakes. Like I was a kid that had plenty of them. Obviously, learning disabilities, anger management, ADD. Always being told I'm dumb, and never making it very far in the spelling bee, which is always kind of funny to me. But I try, like I say, like I don't know what a kid's going through. I don't know where he's at. A lot of times their reality of where they're at and what they want to do aren't even close. So that they're looking through this tunnel vision. And I'm like, let's get on Twitter for 10 minutes and let's look at what other kids are doing. And like you bring them in and you say, hey, look, we're in Tennessee.
Yeah.
You're competing with the world. And especially now, like kids from Puerto Rico are coming to school. They're taking scholarships. They're coming from Latin America now. to actually go to school before they go to the draft, because the way that they've shifted everything in pro ball, like they're not just coming over. And I think it's awesome. Like, I think the more competition, the better. I think it's a really good thing to, try to, pin the best against each other and, squeeze that orange and see what comes out. So like, I try to bring a different outlook to them, and I tell them, like, listen, I played a long time and I love this game and I'm constantly learning, and I learn the most from the people that you would probably least expect. So like, I go outside the box to learn. So, like whether it's a basketball guy, a football guy, a strength coach, I try to use different things and bring it into, that aspect. Like I always tell kids, I'm like, if you're training in the weight room as a pitcher, you're doing yourself a disservice. Be an athlete. Go try to be in the combine. Like, see how good you be. Go bench press as much as you humanly possible.
Yeah.
You'll understand yourself at a completely different level. And I also think that builds up grit and resilience. And I think it's super important. So, yeah, there's times where you want to help a kid so bad, but you can't want it more than them. But like, the thing I've started doing now when I meet kids and I talk to them, like, listen, I will give you everything and more that you give me. But I've gotten to the point where, like, if he wants it more than you and he's constantly trying and I know it's genuine, he's going to get more out of me. That's the natural thing. So like, it's not that I like him more, it's that he wants it more. And I'm telling you now, that's what it takes. Like, come to me and I'll do everything I possibly can to help you succeed. But if you say you want it and the actions aren't, backing up your words, I can't make that happen. As bad as I want it for you, I can't make it. So I just tell them, it's like, take ownership of this right now, or you're going to be on a escalator in life going the wrong direction.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's all up to us as individuals to, like you said, have that genuine want and passion and desire to be curious enough to, again, keep asking questions, keep putting in the work. And it shows at the end of the day. Like, you can do only so much as a coach until it gets to a point where it's like they're not learning anything. They don't want to learn anything. Was it different at a professional level? Because as a catcher, you kind of are like an extension of the coaching staff in a sense, where you're dealing with all of these, young or old veteran pitchers, whether it's at the major league level or in the minor leagues. Because, again, you were in the minor leagues as a young kid, and then you were also in the minor leagues as an adult after experiencing all that. It's like a full circle moment for you. Like, is it a different thing? I mean, obviously it's a different thing dealing with adults as opposed to children when playing the game, teaching them certain things. Because, again, at the pro level, you're dealing with all of these different personalities again. Like, how are you able to not only, like, again, build that connection with the guys, but at the same time keep those different types of personalities in check when it came to being a professional ball player?
So I tried to, like, treat everybody the same, and I tried to get to know everybody on the team. And I did that from day one all the way through. And I was taught in college by my head coach, Steve Peterson. He's very rough around the edges. One of the, like, manliest men I ever met. Very quirky, but very, like, convicted and stubborn. Like, he was stuck in his ways, and it was old school.
Yeah.
Like, when we did blocking practice, like, I had bloody knees, we didn't know what was going to happen. We never got to block on the field. It was always in the Rocky warning track. So, like, he taught me, like, be hard, work your tail off, and take responsibility for everyone else's problems as a catcher. And you're an extension of me and the pitching staff. I love that you said that. And I heard down the line from Jerry Weinstein, who's kind of become a little bit of a mentor of mine. He said, you're a field facilitator. I thought that was really, like, cool way to put it. And I used to make fun of him for coming up with that term. But you really are, like, directing everything that's on the field. But when you come off, I think, especially in pro ball, they forget that, like, those guys down there are your lifeline to learn, because there's so much more going on in pro ball, and it goes from being a game to a business. And you can get really sensitive in it. And I watched a lot of guys like get sensitive because someone's getting more time, more opportunity, whether they're playing better or not, it didn't matter. Maybe they have drafted higher. So they got all the opportunities. But instead of looking at what can I do and take ownership, maybe, all right, they have 2 first-rounders, which just happened to a kid I mentored. He got drafted in the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
Great player. But he got drafted as a senior, kind of a late bloomer. And I told him, I was like, dude, Dansby Swanson and their other first-rounder from the year before, I'm just saying, they're going to get every opportunity. And obviously Dansby's taking advantage of that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And I told him, I was like, go play the outfield. Learn how to play first base. I'll give you some catching gear and teach you a little bit about catching so you could possibly help there. Well, he went in spring training early, asked if he could catch a couple bullpens. They loved it. Well, he ended up skipping a level after he hit barely 200, and that's what he was known for, was hitting. And he ended up being the all-star second baseman in high A. So he literally jumped the league because they needed a guy that could possibly catch a little bit because they wanted their other catcher to be able to DH. And then the second baseman got hurt because he took ground balls at second base and outfield. They sent him straight there when they needed somebody. And then he's stuck. And I think he's going to play AAA this year and, maybe, just maybe get in the big leagues. But he opened up his own door. He didn't wait and say, well, I don't get to play and blah, blah. I was like, what can you control? Just find that and control it. And the guys that did that seemed to have success. The guys that, oh, poor pitiful me, and put the blame on everyone else, they just kind of corroded away in the sand. But I would always be as close as I could. And I know I jump around, but my coach from Middle Tennessee, Steve Peterson, taught me, he's like, when you're not playing, be on my hip or be on our assistant coach's hip or the pitching coach, and be an extension for them. Like, if you see something, tell them. If they don't want to talk to you, try to steal signs. Do something that's going to benefit you. And man, I'm thinking back, I'm 18 years old and I'm being taught this. And I did that my entire career. Everywhere I went, I have pictures. My wife, over the years, took pictures of me with all the coaches. I ended up living with a pitching coach in AAA. Our pitching coach, he's like, hey, you want to live together? I'm like, yeah, dude. And I was 24 years old living with a 48-year-old pitching coach because that's how close those bonds got, because I spent so much time with them because I wanted to help them solve the problems. And then as my career went on and I came back to the minor leagues after a 7-year stint, pretty much in the big leagues, a little bit back and forth, I started to enjoy that more. And that's when I realized I probably should walk away from the game because my love was kind of changing and I didn't want to get bitter.
Right. I mean, evolving at the end of the day, you've basically given it everything that you had to offer. And it got to a point where it was you knew, you had that realization. I feel like a lot of people towards the end of their career are kind of up in limbs where it's should I come back on a 1-year deal? Should I pursue this? Because again, at the end of the day, everybody has their own perspective. You learned at a young age, what you should be, filling your head with in a sense. Like you said, if you're not playing, be picking the brains of people that are going to make you better. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good you are. You can always learn something from somebody, especially those that you're surrounded with in a dugout or in a clubhouse. And you mentioned, there are certain players who realized that, came to that realization. And then there were people who obviously just were I don't need this. It's everybody else's fault. I'm not necessarily the greatest player in the world, but I'm good enough. That's probably comes from, surrounding yourself again with the wrong people in a sense, always telling you, patting you on your back and stuff. How many guys did you play with that you still think to this day just never kind of figured out that realization that you could always learn more from somebody, and they were kind of just stuck in the mud in their own heads, in their own worlds in a sense?
Way too many.
Yeah.
Way too many. I mean, it's sad going all the way back to high school, college, watching guys throw great opportunities away because their priorities were in the wrong place, or they said they wanted something, but they didn't put any real worth behind that word that they were spewing constantly. So they were talking themselves into something that wasn't really true.
Right.
And, I see it more than ever right now. Like, it's kind of sad, dealing with like entitlement issues. The separation between minor leagues and big leagues. Like, you meet more 18-year-olds that think they're already Mike Trout and
Right.
Albert Pujols. And I'm like,
Exactly.
where did that come from? Like, that's crazy to me. And like, I couldn't sit on the couch when I was at big league camp. I went to 14 big league camps, and like, it took a long time before like I was hanging out at the card table and like wasn't carrying the bags and doing all the things that like you're supposed to do as like a young player and a rookie, I thought. And it wasn't then. It was probably closer to hazing. There's a lot of things they probably couldn't ever do now. But
Right.
like, there is something to be said to when Torrey Alba made me carry his bag every single spring training, and I had to carry it to the furthest field every really, really cool to get to know him that way. And he did it out of a respect at the same time. So I think that's how you get to know your teammates. And I think now with your smartphone and all the stuff that's around, like, the actual personalities don't clash together, and guys, fill their own head with, their own thing, their own entitlement, whatever. And, they read about, ooh, look what they said about me today, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. Oh, what is this person saying this for? That's not true. Instead of being like, well, why would they say that? Like, okay, let's see, like, where are they coming from? Maybe that is a little something, like, it's crazy. Because that's a big passion of mine now, is like pouring into the youth, and whew, it's crazy.
Oh
It's,
yeah. I
it's,
mean,
it's a wild time, especially with the pandemic, man.
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, it's tough to again kind of pour that knowledge and connect with players when you have to do it like this. Especially like when it first started. I know a lot of collegiate teams, at least, were having to again create that culture via Zoom, and it's very hard for not necessarily like the people that are again like in their own heads like that, like, oh, I'm the best player in the world. I'm Mike Trout at 15 years old. I hit 30 home runs in rec this year, or whatever it is, like, because then there's those people who, come to that self-realization that I really got to bust my hump and actually get to work and continue working if I actually want to have a chance and be fortunate enough to get to the certain level that I want to get to. How important do you think the team aspect of that is? Because I know, at least for me, towards the tail end of my high school playing days, like, it was all about the scouting. It was all about the individual player. You show up, you play tournaments, and it's all about, the scouts looking at each individual player than it is, the team having a good time and having that chemistry to build and gel together to create that atmosphere that everybody in the long term, whether you're a baseball player or you leave the game of baseball at that level, you build that mentality in your head that, like, to get ahead, you got to put in the work, you got to be kind to people. And at the same time, you have to have that mentality. Like, how important do you think like the team aspect is, and do you utilize that in your coaching?
Yes. I was a team first guy through and through.
Yeah.
So like, it was ingrained in me with great coach. I was very fortunate. One of the best men on the planet that I know, Tommy Farr, my high school coach, and I'm still friends with him to today. He's probably one of the greatest like men in my life, and like, I inspire to be as good as him, as a dad, as a coach, as a human being, like, all of it.
Yeah.
So like, it was ingrained in me with just good people. I was, like I said, you get a bad coach, it could change everything. You just talk about it, like the kid that, or a coach that makes fun of you because he doesn't know what to do or how to handle you or whatever. There's so many different aspects to it, but the team mentality is kind of shifted, right? Um, but like, I'm a big military buff. I've always been very drawn to it, even
Yeah.
as a kid. I pretty sure my energy could have gone that direction if I didn't have ball. And therefore, like, one of my best friends is a police officer and a business owner, and another good friend of mine, Navy SEAL, and he kind of introduced me to that whole world. I did some of their training with them, cleared rooms, still that stuff, and their team mentality is special. And they get to a point where they, like I said, they trick themselves into, it's almost a brainwashing system when it goes to buds, because it gets kind of wild. But like, there's an aspect to that is like, how can I serve you today? How can I make you better today? Ultimately, it's going to make everyone better. But like too often we worry about, and especially in sports and in today's society, how am I going to get mine? And like, instead of like, how can I make you better? I always think about like, right now we're talking about equity and equality and all these things in this world. And I'm just like, why aren't we just talking about servability? What if everyone just served? Like the greatest gift in life is giving something to someone that can do nothing for you, but like you giving it to them, right?
Yep.
So like if we did that as a team constantly. So like I tell guys, there are coaches that I've done some consults with over this pandemic. I'm like, hey, have them reach out to somebody that maybe would appreciate it, right? Like maybe nursing home, maybe they call a family member, like whatever. Just do something of kindness.
Right.
Have them call a little leaguer and just talk ball with them. Like the little leaguer will be so lit up about it, right? Like just do some fun stuff that's serving someone that can do absolutely nothing for that high school kid or that college kid. Because at the end of the day, that's going to give them some joy. Maybe they don't realize it, but like we talked about earlier, that little seed will be planted. And maybe that'll manifest over time. And all of a sudden, hey, you look up and like, remember him? He's got a Fortune 500 company that, gives 40% of their revenue away. How cool is that? Like, I don't know. I'm sure that would never happen, but you never know. Like, I think that's how you build a real team, by creating a group of men that are leading each other. Like one of the Navy SEAL Creed, it's one of my favorite lines. I'm a man that, I think it may say man and woman. I don't know what it says now, but like that's all changing too. I can't keep up. But it says I'm a person that can be led or that can lead or be led in any moment.
Yep.
I think that's brilliant. And I think if we all kind of walked life like that, I think we'd be in a better place.
And unfortunately, that's becoming like a lesser thing in today's world, especially with kids. Like for me personally, like my age group, like I thought we were horrendous. We were like a horrendous high school class. Like looking at it now, like we're saints compared to some of the high schoolers I see today.
Wild, right?
But like, I mean, to your credit, like yes, like you don't see that generosity as much anymore, at least genuine generosity. Again, like to your credit, like you see people do nice things, but what's their agenda, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You don't see people, going out of their way just to be kind. Like you said, like you have nothing to gain from this person, but maybe, just maybe, that'll plant the seed in them to be like, wow, that I'm kind of inspired by that. And then they pay it forward to make the world an overall better place, step by step, person by person.
Yeah, I think if, like I always say, if you can like be a little bit more like Jesus on a daily basis, knowing that you're going to fail. If you're reaching for the stars, you may land on the moon. Like I love that quote because like that's the reality we should be living.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like we can't bring people along in life. Like one of my favorite analogies that I learned as a kid was like, if you're up on a pedestal and you're trying to pull people up, who do you think's going to fall? It's not going to be the person that's pulling you down, right? It's going to be you. You're going to fall down. So like, don't always try to pick people up. Like, shout from the rooftops of the pedestal you have. And I try to tell like college kids, I'm like, if you're at a university and it's happens to be Vanderbilt or Tennessee, you have a huge platform, probably bigger than ever before with social media, SEC network. Use your platform because your boss may be sitting right next to you. Love on that guy. Serve that guy.
Yep.
He may be someone you would never talk to because you're too cool for school because you got your full jumpy on and you're in class, right? And all the girls are like, oh, look, he's on the football team. But no, love that guy because one day he may come back and love you when you need it. And
Yep.
if we focus on that and, used our platform for the good, like literally, what would the world look like?
Networking is giving at the end of the day. It takes
Absolutely.
a lot of people. It takes a lot of people, a lot of experiences, a lot of life experiences to learn that. But networking is about giving. How do you utilize that when it comes to being an analyst on TV for AT&T with the Pirates? Like, because being a former player, you're coaching kids as well. Being an analyst on television, you're analyzing pre and post game shows for Pirates games. How do you have any way of, influencing the people that you work with when it comes to being an analyst and working in that environment?
Yes, in the office and day to day, absolutely. Like I'm a guy that I like to know, like, how do you edit? Is something
Yeah.
like, how does it go in producing? And I found out that's not normal from the analyst, or they call us the talent, and I hate
Right.
it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just an analyst, and you know, it kind of opened up a door to like get to know people differently. Like the editors are in this bay down in the basement right next to the studio. It's freezing cold, and I feel like they're like literally hibernating down there. So I'll go down there and hang out with them for a couple innings, watch them edit. We'll talk about tunneling pitches, spin rate, different things, and now they've gotten enthralled with it. So it creates a like friendship and a bond. And then what I try to do as an analyst on TV is a couple things to serve the community. Is I want to try to teach whenever I can. I want to try to teach the guy at home that is pissed off about the game. I want to try to give him perspective and teach him that they're human beings and that the game's really hard and that you're going to watch these guys fail more than they're going to succeed. But look for the good. Like, has this kid gotten better? Look, it's August. He was hitting 110. Now he's hitting 280. He's getting better. Yeah, the team's losing, but look at the diamonds that are coming out of this rough patch. And then it changes your perspective. And then for the kids like me that couldn't afford the hitting coach and the strength coach, and they have every coach now, right? Like they have their like guru, they have their nutritionist, their cook. Like it's amazing all the stuff that's going on in today's game. But like that kid that can't afford it and that's working during the summer, playing during the summer, which is something I did. I'm like, how can I help him? Because he wants it. He doesn't have the same resources. How can I help that kid today? So I just think of one person in my brain. That's what I do when I go speak. That's what I do, when I'm on air. I'm thinking about one person that maybe can grab something that day and see where it goes. And I hope I help people. I hope that one day someone comes up to me, and says, "Thank you, man. Like, I really appreciate what you said." And they'll tell me something. I'm like, yeah, like that's what I wanted, that ripple. So I hope this year with the pandemic, we have a new studio, bunch of new gadgets to
Yeah.
do a lot of demos and teach kids new drills, why to use them. And we have some really cool segments that I've been like pounding the pavement with, and I think we're going to get them through. So it'll be a chance to actually put the kids on camera
Oh, yeah.
and break down their swings. So they'll get like a free coaching lesson on air. So they'll be TV stars and get a little bit of knowledge from breaking down their swing.
And yeah, you make a great point of, the kids who don't necessarily have those resources. Like those kids are going to be the ones that are more motivated, pissed off in a sense, and like really are going to work to drive themselves forward, as opposed to a lot of talented kids who, like you said, they have the nutritionists, they have the diet plans, they have everything they need. They're spoiled, they're not necessarily as fired up or motivated to get after it on a day-to-day basis. And it's kind of interesting to think about, because how many major league-esque talented kids are there out there that have that potential? Like there's a lot of good kids that you go through, playing ball with in your own town, but like they're not major league baseball. They're not professional ball good. But there are a few kids that, okay, they have the potential, but they weren't necessarily prescribed with the tough love nature of things. Like you have to work in order to earn this aspect to get to the next place. Like everything's being given to you on a silver platter, which we're seeing more and more of today. But it's interesting to think about, like, do you think that there's a lot of talent out there that'll never make it just because of their not necessarily their mentality, but just how they've been treated growing up? Because like when it gets synced into your head that you're awesome, you're amazing, you have everything that's being given to you, there's no edge. Like you need that edge, you need that chip on your shoulder to get to the next level.
Yeah, I think some people need edge, some people need reality, some people need a punch in the face.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone, like, I've seen the struggle with kids that have everything, and I've seen the struggle with kids that don't have anything,
Right.
and vice versa. And I think it's all a matter of like for example, single parent mom doing everything they possibly can do for their kid, showing them what life's like. Hey, it's not easy, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make it good for you. And you need to go do that for everyone you meet.
Right.
That instills something in that kid, and then he appreciates everything he has. And he takes care of his gear because that's the only glove he has. He takes care of, his body because he wants to take care of his mom and, pay for a house one day. So that changes perspective. Vice versa, that same type of mentality, divorced family, tough life, but from the outside has everything, right? Big house, private school, all these things. But like he's in a broken home, he's abused, like we just don't know. So like the worldly standards can be good and bad. It's really about what principles are they learning and who they're getting it from. And where is that energy going? Because it's easy. Like it's easy to take energy of being a Major League Baseball player and say, oh, no, I went this route. I'm a drug dealer. I'm really good at it because I have that ability to be good at things and be successful. But being successful doing really bad things or destroying your body or destroying other human beings is just a product of a lot of things happening and you making choices by the standards and the understanding. So like I try to tell kids, I'm like, go learn as much as you possibly can, good and bad. And like if you're like if you have a strong issue with something, try to disprove it, right? Because you're either going to make your argument stronger or it's going to be like, maybe I should have a little bit more grace when I talk to people. And we see that right now in the political world. It's like, dude, just love the person next to you. Like their politics don't matter. Talk about principles, talk about values, and then come in alignment with what they're doing at the top, because what they're doing at the top, like you can't control it. All you can control is the people around you, and principles and values are going to lead the way, not a law or whatever you're going to argue about today because it's on the news or it's on TV or someone got canceled. It's like, why can't we just say, hey, why? What happened? Like, what's going on? Like, is your heart just broken right now? Like,
exactly.
I can try to find that forgiveness and let them learn from it and grow. Like Nick Saban, like one of my favorite things I've ever heard a college coach said. He goes, "What good does it do for my running back?" And it was one of his best players, I think, at the time, to get in trouble and me kick him off.
Yeah.
He's coming from nothing, so he's going to go to nothing and get into things he shouldn't get into because he has time that he doesn't have. And he's going to feel defeated. Why can't I wrap my arms around him, discipline this man? He's a man now, and try to lead him into a better life. And that's so strong because like we want to cancel him and shun people. And it's like, that's not good. Like that's not good for them. That's not good for anyone else because it creates a fear that shouldn't be there, where we should be like, you may have the smallest wings ever, go fly, go at least try, like you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes, but we'll pick you back up and try to help you along the way. So
you're going to fail regardless. Like you could either stay and just shelter yourself. And we've seen that with, some parents just sheltering their kids. They don't want to see them fail. They don't want to see them get hurt, all that stuff. But at the same time, you're failing in that sense. Like they're not even trying. Like not even trying is a failure in a lot of people's mindsets. Like you have to go out and you have to fail in order to build that mental toughness and that mentality in order to do things. And yeah, like in the political world, people are jumping on bandwagon, whether it's left or right, because it comes from a certain level of, I don't want to say insecurity, but like people haven't really discovered themselves. Like, what are your own personal beliefs? Like, what are we all trying to like come together to do? Like, I feel like people are just like, oh, it's either this way or it's that way. Like, that's not necessarily the case. You could learn from both sides. Like we'd be a much more united nation if everybody just came together and like listened to each other, as opposed to just like they say one thing and it just comes out your ear the other way, and everybody's like, oh my God, like why would you say something like that? Like you weren't even listening. Like if everybody just listened to each other and learned from each other, like it would be such a more peaceful situation. But again, I guess the way the media puts it this way, it's a total mess. But I have one question left for you. I don't want to take too much of your time. I've taken like an hour of your time already.
These podcasts, it's usually fun. And like I did one with a guy, my Navy SEAL buddy. We ended up having 5 podcasts.
Ooh,
When we talk, man. Like
yeah.
I talk for a living, so I get going. And like he was a motivational speaker, and like so like it was just like 5.5 hours later, we're like, what just happened? Right? Then we did another one 5 hours. I'm like, dude, what are we gonna do with these? I still think he has archived some of them, but like it was fun because some of the stuff we were actually walking through in life together too. So it was just cool. So like, don't worry about time. It's always good.
I mean, it's awesome to have real conversations like that too. You know, like those are the conversations that you look back at and you're like, 5.5 hours, really? Like I just spent half my day doing this. Like I didn't even realize it because you were having a real cool conversation with somebody. But I have one really, I guess, deep question, I guess, that I kind of wanted to leave with it because I've heard in multiple interviews that you've done, you know, like your top 3 things, number 1 being your faith, number 2, family, number 3, baseball. And it was probably that way for a long time. You know, I have a ton of, you know, friends who value their Christianity almost over everything as well. And I'm a man enough to admit that I'm kind of trying to figure it out in a sense. Like it's very peaceful. I go to church every Sunday, but at the same time, I don't think I've connected with it in the same way that others have. And I know that you have connected with your faith in that way. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, yeah, like it's a daily thing. Like you're constantly working with it as with anything else, whether you're dealing with your faith, anxiety, depression, whatever you're dealing with. It's a roller coaster. It's every single day. But how do you come to the realization that that's like number 1? Because, you know, like some people may look at it like faith number 1, family number 2, like maybe family should be number 1. But at the same time, like your faith in God, because if you have that faith, it's like he controls everything. Like at the end of the day, he has a plan for everybody. Like what was it for you that you thought like that is number 1, like that is the number 1 necessity for me? I'm going to give everything that I have and just put it at his feet, and he's going to take care of everything.
So I'm gonna follow you up with a question first. Is like what have you seen as Christianity? So this past summer, you know, I'm from Tennessee.
Right.
So Tennessee's a very like red state.
Yeah.
People don't talk about stuff, right? But like when I went to Pittsburgh, especially with the pandemic, like I came from a like more open state, more lockdown. All the political views were played very differently.
Right.
And guys were asking questions. And what I realized is like it was what people were perceiving more than anything else. It didn't matter like about your true values or like the human being. It just mattered about red, blue, state, north, south, like, and then it became white, black, then it became gender. Like it was always separate. Like, but like my heart's red, your heart's red. Jesus is our savior. That's it. Like we're there. So I ask you is like, what have you seen as a Christian? What do you see at church? Because there's a fundamental issue going on in society that isn't talked about and people are scared of it, especially people in the church. So I ask you, like, what's been your background in understanding what Christianity is and what like it's supposed to be?
From what I've experienced,
I guess church too, like church Christianity.
Oh yeah. Well, so for me, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and when it came to Roman Catholicism, I don't think a lot of people were turned on it, especially the kids I was surrounding myself with. Like I didn't get it. I went to a Catholic high school as well. Still didn't click for me. As I've been in college, I go to a Christian school. I've been going to, you know, more, you know, laid back Christian churches where people actually talk about, you know, real stuff. They give testimonies. Huh?
What school?
Grand Canyon University.
Ah, cool school.
Yep. We're getting there. Everybody's going to know about GCU in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty campus, man. That's awesome.
I mean, it's in the middle of the ghetto, but once you step inside, you're safe. Everything's pretty cool. But yeah, like growing up in, you know, Roman Catholicism, it was completely different. It was like, you have to do things this way. If you don't, you're going to hell, as opposed to, you know, a couple of these churches that I've been to recently. Like, it's more about giving. Everybody's understanding. Everybody has their own story, like we've been talking about. Everybody giving their own testimony. You know, we bring up, you know, controversial subjects all the time. At least our pastors do. Just for an example, last week we were talking about transgender, and like, I don't think there was anybody in the building, but at the same time we were treating it as if someone was, and we were trying to get inside, not necessarily their head, but trying to get a better understanding for what it is, as opposed to just being like, oh, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's weird.
Sin.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
We're scared about it. Like, we're actually like trying to figure it out with like statistics or, you know, research. Like, actually go out of your way to be like, okay, maybe this is why they're thinking this way. Maybe this is what was going wrong that was making them suffer on the inside, as, you know, again, opposed to just judging right away. So for me, look, from what I've experienced, is that Christianity, again, is about not only giving, it's about forgiving, and it's about accepting individuals.
Say that one more time.
It's about so the main three things were Christianity. What did I say? Forgiving, accepting, and then what was the first thing I said? The second was forgiving, accepting, and giving. Yeah, forgiving, giving, and accepting.
Awesome. So I've been my faith has been at a stall for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm an all-in type person with most things, but like I've been through a lot in life, and I've watched people I love go through a lot in life. Like, we lost 4 people this year, none to COVID, and it was tough. It was more tough watching people be resentful and hateful and like deceptive because of something they couldn't control. And I saw fear take over people of faith. And I'm like, fear, faith, exact opposite. It's like, not good. This is terrible. So I think when you said those 3 things, like, there's a quote that I love. It says, starts with Jesus, or begins with Jesus, stays with Jesus, ends with Jesus. So those are my 3 things. And I think the church gets away from that constantly. So like, when you're talking about transgenders, like, our world right now is separate from God due to sin. So that separation's created disease, famine, all these things, chemical imbalances, ADD, depression, anxiety, because we're separating. And the further we get away, the weirder it's going to get. And it's really that, like, everyone has their issues. And just because someone sins different than me, I'm still a sinner. I still got problems. Like, all the churches in the United States and across the planet should be like hospitals. It should be for broken, messed up people, including the doctors and everyone else. And you just meet them where they're at and say, man, how can I serve you today? And how can I maybe give you a little light of Jesus today? And that's it. And, I let my, faith in Christianity kind of get dictated by people that just broke my heart, and people I looked up to that, really did some terrible things to me. And, I looked up to them because they helped me grow my faith, almost like a mentor style. And then coming back and understanding they had no intention to mentor me. They were using me for their advantage in every single way.
Yeah.
And I would have never known unless it came to light by accident. So like, it's crazy. And then you have choices to make in life where, like, am I the bigger person, or do I do what the world wants me to do? Like lawsuits and different things. I mean, some crazy stuff happened to me over the last couple of years when it came to Christian men. And I had to kind of go back in. I've really dove into a lot of different, teachings over the years. And it really just falls back to understanding the world's broken, and we don't have a choice in that ever. So when we come out of the womb, as excited as I was to go play baseball, before I could walk, before I could talk, I was coming in with a lot of obstacles, a lot of barriers. And, understanding that early on for kids is so important, because it creates that grit and resilience. Like if you think that like bad things aren't going to happen, sorry, like no one can run away from cancer. No one can run away from loss or grief. Like I don't care how much money you have. I don't think they've come up with the amount of money that cures brain cancer or that can make you feel better when your like dog passes away or something bad happens in life. Like there's not an amount of money. So it's understanding that there is something though, and it's Jesus. And Dennis Prager said something that I heard a while back. He said, my faith grows daily by watching people replace God. And I think that's brilliant because if you haven't listened, like I said, I listen to a spectrum of things. And Jordan Peterson's been a guy I've loved watching him grow. And yeah, you got his book? I love it. I love it. So, but like he talks about the hierarchy system. And
Oh yeah.
if you realize that we're ultimately made in God's image and we're trying to replace ourselves as God over time if we get away from him. And at some point, the Bible tells you straightforward, like that's when the Antichrist comes, and that's when everything,
Exactly.
Starts over, right? So it's really taking a reality, and whether you believe in the Bible, you believe in Jesus, whatever you believe, it doesn't matter. Like everyone, like Sam Harris, like atheist, argues he's very, scientifically based. That's why I love Jordan Peterson, because he's on both spectrums, and I can watch him slowly coming into, his like real strong faith within Jesus. And he has a weird perspective at the beginning and he molds into it. But like hearing them talk, like he's searching for the same thing. It's just different. And it's like, man, these two guys can talk and have a good conversation and grow. And someone's listening to this, it's been like, makes me want to ask more questions. And that's like ultimately what we need is like people that don't have anything in common come together and try to find out why. Because we're all made in God's image and we're woven together by a creator that made the mountains and made us perfectly go around the sun at a perfect axis at the right time. We have 4 different seats. Like when you really put it in perspective, like we have way more to look at and say thanks than like everything's awful. Like we
Oh
can't
yeah.
do anything, like because tomorrow's never guaranteed. But like it is for us because we have Jesus, right? Actually, tomorrow could be better. You know what I mean? Like, but Paul said to die is gain, but we need to focus on our growth here and showing people Jesus. And if you look at what he did in his life in the 33 years he was here, I don't think he pushed people out of the church because they weren't baptized. I don't think that because they didn't wear their penny loafers on Sunday, they weren't accepted. I'm pretty sure he didn't have a pair of penny loafers. So maybe we should just focus on like, hey, dude, come on, man, let's go. Because that's how I found Jesus. Someone invited me into something that I didn't know existed. And it ended up being, I've met a bunch of dudes that I became friends with because they played basketball, which was my first love, just
Yeah.
I'm short deprived. So I think at the end of the day, what makes me tick is when like I can feel the Holy Spirit convicting and I don't run away from it. Lecrae wrote a song recently and he said, walking with the limp because I've been wrestling with the Holy Ghost.
Yep.
That's kind of where I've been. And like, I'm ready for it to end. And it's my own fault. I mean, Jesus, like, come on, I'll carry you. Wait, I already have. Like, just come on. Like, just accept it. Like, that's the only thing I want is you to worship me. That's it. Like, everything else, like, I can do on my own. I could actually make you do this, but I'm not going to because I want you to want this.
Right.
I think that's so cool. I mean, think about it, God. Like, and I hate when the one thing I hate what the church is doing now is trying to put God in a box. Like we're supposed to understand a God. Like it's funny to me, right? Like, hey, like Bob Ross was good at art, but look over there.
Right.
Like we're trying to put that in perspective. We're trying to put in perspective that our genetics are woven together perfectly. Like it's just wild stuff. So
I mean, it's crazy to think about it. Like you said, you know, we come together, and God has the almighty power to be like, okay, like give you the realization of this, but at the same time, I'm going to pull back because you have to figure this out on your own. Like I'm going to let you, get back into the swing of things on your own. And I also think it's like big, like crucial when it comes to listening and at the same time understanding. Like you said, when it comes to people who are Christians and people who are atheists, coming together, like being there, having the curiosity. I think curiosity is also a must, a very pivotal thing in all of this, because if you're, again, like to allude to the other things that we were talking about, whether it's coaching, whether it's the politics that we see today in the media, if you're not willing to listen, if you're just willing to jump to conclusions about somebody and like judge them for like what they believe in or what they're doing, like you're not going to learn, and you're not going to get a better understanding for life as a whole at the end of the day, because everybody is wired differently and everybody's got a different story to tell, and everybody, again, is trying to get to that same place with their faith, all in different directions, all in different ways. And if you misconcept or judge, again, a certain way that somebody's going, like they're not going to grow and you're not going to grow mentally on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, there's a reason why Jesus walked around with 13 homies, right? And they all fled in the time of need, right? Because of, worldly view, how they would be seen in that moment, right? And at the end of the day, if you don't stand up for the believer, the guy that gave you life, breathed life into you, what are you going to stand up for? So that's what I always say. Like, outside of politics, outside of like the way you want your kids to be taught, outside of, little Johnny should be playing second base because,
Exactly.
Dustin Pedroia, but he's only 8. Like cool, but I just care about him as a human being, and I want to give him a little bit more Jesus. If he's Dustin Pedroia, awesome. But right now, like, he's got his glove on the wrong hand. Like, we need to work on him understanding the game, and I'm scared he's going to get hurt more than anything. Like, because they see something in their little box, and that's where the world is right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we have to accept that, because I can't make you believe something I believe, but I can want to understand why you believe it. So if I come to you and say, hey man, like, what do you think about this? Whatever it is. And I love talking about bad issues and weird issues, because I do it different, because I go from a value system of the Bible. And like I was saying a minute ago, it doesn't matter if you believe or don't believe, if you're Sam Harris or not, there's great stories in there to learn. And whether you think it's like everything's literal or you think it's a storybook, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, that argument always happens, and I'm like, who cares? Like, if like Jonah wasn't in the well and that's your ish, like, that's cool if it was, but if not, like, is it really that big of a deal? The storyline to that is always changing with what's going on in our life. Name another book that does that.
Right.
Like, where can we get that anywhere else? This thing is like always evolving, right? And why these books? Like, why were like the 5 other people that wrote the same exact stories? Why were those people left out, but this one came in? Like, and why was it all over the world the same stories? And it's just like, it's crazy when you start like processing it. And I'm like, well, that's how that was woven together. Maybe we should just focus on that and do what Jesus did. Ask more questions. When he was tempted after 40 days, what did he do when the devil was coming at him, right? He would be like, well, do you know what it says? Like, do you know this? Like, can I ask you? Like, he just kept asking the devil questions and teaching. And he wasn't doing like, no, you're wrong. I could do that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, that does nothing for anyone, right? It's just, it's so cool to me, because every answer's right in front of our face and we run
Oh,
from
yeah.
it, because ego, because we don't want to look at other people's realities or understand the realities, because we don't know.